Welcome to part 3 of the Maton Flamingo Tribute Practice Build with Pine and Ply. At this point I was just lining up and ensuring that the pickup alignment was centered, and I wrote down the measurements for how deep each of the pickup routes needed to be. The P90 was about 14mm, the single coil strat pickup needed to be about 25mm, and for the bucker it needed to be 25 for the body and 32 for where the height adjustment screws are located on each side. I thought I would have a crack at chiseling the pickup cavities to see how long it would take, but this was mostly for the experience to gauge how much effort and time would be required to complete it if I continued. I have not chiseled like this since high school, so I was curious. I didn't spend too much time with this because I knew I had a router there and chiseling would take more time than I wanted to spend on it. I was very happy that the strings were perfectly in line with the neck, and this meant that the bridge was located in the correct position and or the neck route was planned out and centered perfectly. I was quite happy with the progress I had made, having another play with the chisel. At this time of night I was ready to pack it in and was already pushing my luck with the noise that I was making on my back veranda. This is how I would have cut the sockets if I didn't have a router, but if I didn't have a router I would probably still be shaping the sides of the guitar with a file. I did intentionally start to route a bit of a channel down the centre to link the pickup cavities together. I thought I might need it for wiring under the pickguard, but wiring came out below each pickup into the electrics cavity. I thought I would clean up the front of the guitar a bit. I was mainly concerned about the centre join line, as it was quite noticeable, and a little bit of liquid nails had spilt out onto the front around it. In the end, this was not the final sanding, but just to clean up the edges and the round over where there were router burn marks. Here I am cutting out the outline of the pickguard, printed straight out of Photoshop at 100%, and knew that I wouldn't have any scaling issues. I used a pencil to mark the paper to transfer where the real pickguard cavities were. With the single coil, I was just making sure that I had the right size. I would then scan this back into Photoshop to line it all up. I would then print it out again to give the locations for the pickups and show where I could route safely, leaving enough area for the screw holes. I bought this tool bit because a lot of luthiers use it to cut out a lot of material, but I was not keen on how deep the center point would dig beyond the main area of the cutaway. I didn't want the tip to point through the back, so I avoided that tool altogether and continued with my process of routing 3 to 4 millimeters at a time until I got to the depth I required using just the router. The area above the humbucker is not for a selector switch as per a Maton or a Gibson, but I cut it out to install a kill switch later that I didn't end up doing. Here I am installing the pickguard for the first time to make sure the whole setup would fit within the route and test the wiring. I do have an entire video dedicated to the wiring of this particular pickguard. This pickguard harness ended up being transferred over to the final Maton Flamingo tribute I made later because it was the main project. To complete this guitar, I used mostly spare Squire parts to dodgy up something to make it playable. When trialling the pickguard to test the routes, I realised the routes for the height adjustment screws of the humbucker were not deep enough, so it was pushing the pickguard up and not letting it lay flush to the surface of the guitar. Pickup rings would have raised them slightly more out of the body, but would have also put the pickup on a slight angle. The pickup ring would also look slightly weird on a pickguard. I ended up changing the angle of the humbucker route slightly so the lower left side of the route had more clearance. I felt that the alignment was a little bit off, or I had simply not cut the humbucker route big enough, because when the pickguard sat down, I had a sense that there was a lot of pressure up against that side of the pocket. These are the cheap locking tuners that I bought through eBay from China. I was reinstalling the strings that I had trimmed already, so I had to stretch out the high E to make it fit again. While we are looking at the necks, I'm going to explain what happened with the neck swap over. This neck is a Mexican fender neck that came on a second-hand Mexi Strat that I bought through a local trading website. It is the more standard Stratocaster neck, and I wanted to swap it out with the neck that has a fatter 70s style headstock for my Stratocaster. So I bought a Lone Star Strat neck through the Stratosphere website. The Lone Star Strat was also made in Mexico, so it was just a matter of swapping the necks, but I paid a luthier to install the neck and set it up properly. This left me with my Mexi Strat neck that you see here on this Flamingo. Now, because this was only the trial body that initially I was going to discard and move all the parts that you see onto the next build, this body was not going to have a neck. Since I decided to finish painting and clear coat it, I had to get a neck for it and some other parts to make it a working guitar. So I went on the trading site again, and luckily there was a guy selling a Squire neck with a rosewood fretboard and a 70s headstock. I simply prefer the 70s style headstock for a Stratocaster. It also happened to come with some nice tuners. This is the end of part 3. I will see you again in part 4.